sensation. The Kremlin is in turmoil like never before. There's a real storm in Moscow. Gerasimov is hanging by a thread, and Putin is exploding with rage behind closed doors. Generals are fleeing en masse, burning documents and secretly removing classified archives. An atmosphere of fear and betrayal right inside the Kremlin offices. Rumor has it the dictator is already looking for a new scapegoat to pin the failure on. But while the Kremlin devours itself, the army is falling apart at the seams. Russian might has turned out to be a myth. Will Moscow survive its own storm? You'll find out in just a moment.
The last leg of Valery Gerasimov's chair has finally broken. The movement reports that the Kremlin is extremely dissatisfied with the general's work and, to put it mildly, his untruthful reports from the front. And the unremarkable and charisma-lacking Valery Gerasimov is the man to whom Putin owes his first presidential term. It was he who, while Moscow was preparing to check boxes on ballots, commanded the combat operations for the village of Komsomolskoye. This battle, which lasted 15 days, became the key and final one in the Russian Second Chechen campaign. Gerasimov delivered victory to candidate Putin, marching over the numerous corpses of Russian army soldiers and local residents.
The residents were allowed to leave the village. Well, they weren't allowed to get very far. They were forced to stay for several days on the outskirts of the village, but in reality, they served as a human shield.
In 2012, it was Gerasimov who presented the formula for hybrid warfare to the Ukrainian leadership. At that time, he insisted that it was necessary to move away from classical wars toward destabilization on the ground.
According to Putin, this means actively using protest potential.
A little later, the Gerasimov formula was first tested by the Russians in Crimea and then in Donbass. According to Bellingcat investigators, in 2014, Valery Gerasimov was the initiator of sending regular Russian troops to Ukraine's Ilovaisk and transferring Russian military equipment to the separatists, from which, among other things, the Malaysian Boeing was shot down. Mute Gerasim, as this grey cardinal of the general staff is called among themselves, has outlasted all his flamboyant and loud critics.
Those who don't give us the essential ammunition and support we need will be eating it bit by bit in hell. We currently have a severe 70% shortage of ammunition supplies. Shoigu, Gerasimov, can you tell us where exactly is the ammunition? We urgently need to know the location of the ammunition.
Prigozhin was blown up. Strelkov Gherkin is dying behind bars. After the scandal, it was precisely through his efforts. Valery Gerasimov was sent there, as was the favorite of Russian Z patriots, General Popov. Even after he was removed from the Ministry of Defense, Mute Gerasim still sits in his chair. Although rumors about his dismissal have been actively circulating since last summer. And now supposedly they really do have some basis. If Gerasimov fails to capture Pokrovsk, he will be replaced by a certain Viktor Viktorovich Posnikir by mid-November, who was born and raised near the Ukrainian city of Sumy. Not much is known about him. He was secretly awarded the Order of Zhukov, and in February,
In the year 2024, he was promoted to the distinguished rank of Colonel General, marking a significant advancement in his military career and reflecting the recognition of his leadership and service. During this time, important developments took place in the historic cities of Palmyra and Aleppo, both of which have played crucial roles in recent military operations and have been at the center of strategic efforts in the region. Posnikir also addressed the ongoing work of the Russian military police stationed throughout the Middle East, highlighting their responsibilities in maintaining order, supporting local authorities, and ensuring the safety and security of civilians in areas affected by conflict and instability. In his remarks, he openly criticized the continued presence of American military forces in the region, expressing concerns that their involvement complicates efforts to achieve peace and stability. However, what drew even greater attention was the Lieutenant General's statement regarding the United States' plans to develop a global missile defense system, a move he suggested could have significant implications for international security and the balance of power worldwide. At the Moscow Conference on International Security, Posnikir called Washington a likely adversary of Moscow. To overcome missile defense, Viktor Viktorovich proposed using the Sarmat and Avangard systems.
It is still unknown whether Gerasimov will be able to outsmart his adversaries again and hold on. Since the summer, the occupiers have been amassing troops in the Pokrovsk direction and probing for weak spots in the Ukrainian defenses. On their side are Russia's vast resources, which they spare no expense to achieve their goals, and a large number of fortune seekers who have been lured by contracts and the prospect of a new hero status. And in 2025, Pokrovsk could become an important and decisive battle, much like the Chechen village of Komsomolskoye once was.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
The world is frozen in tension, a historic turning point. China, which just yesterday was cautiously keeping its distance, is now playing a completely different game. Beijing is demonstratively turning away from the Kremlin and extending a hand to you. Xi Jinping and Trump on the same side? Unthinkable, but a fact. All the signals point to it. The old alliance with Moscow is falling apart at the seams, while the US is applying unprecedented pressure. The geopolitical chessboard has been overturned, and the consequences could be enormous. What lies behind this alliance, and why is the Kremlin in a panic? More in the story ahead.
A truce or the calm before the storm? China has announced the suspension of an additional 24% tariff on American goods. The easing will last for a year. At the same time, the basic 10% tariff, which was introduced in response to a similar tariff by Trump announced in April, remains in place.
The US is the largest goods market and China is the largest goods producer. How does China make money? By supplying its products to the largest markets. And as we believe, the US is the primary one.
The decision to update the agreements was made after a meeting between Donald Trump and Xi Jinping. Reuters reports. Thanks to this, tariffs of up to 15% were also lifted on certain types of agricultural products from the US.
From an economic standpoint, China and the US cannot be, let's say, not just in different camps, but even be adversaries. In fact, they are in different camps because they are competing over who is the leading economy.
China's Ministry of Finance noted that they are suspending all tariffs imposed on March 4th on soybeans and other US agricultural products, including corn, wheat, sorghum, and chicken. It was stated that the decision was made in accordance with the consensus reached during economic and trade consultations between
China in particular, and specifically the United States of America, commonly known as the USA.
The US and China have also agreed to establish direct communication between their armed forces. As stated by Pentagon Chief Pithx, this will help prevent potential conflicts between the countries. Another step China has taken towards the US is its refusal to import Russian oil. According to Bloomberg, major companies and small private enterprises in China have canceled nearly half of their oil shipments from Russia after the US imposed sanctions on Rosneft and Lukoil in October. And
when the question arises of whom China will choose, Russia or the USA, one must understand a simple thing. There is the USA and one state, the largest is California. And California's economy is twice the size of Russia's economy, just one state. The USA in America is like two economies of the Russian Federation. Of course, for China, the USA is much more important than Russia.
Putin absolutely does not want to let go of one of his few remaining partners, so he sent his prime minister to Beijing with greetings. As a result of the negotiations, the parties signed about 10 documents on cooperation in the fields of energy, space, and high
technologies are the various tools, devices, and systems that people create and use to solve problems, make tasks easier, and improve the quality of life. They include everything from simple inventions like the wheel to complex digital networks and computers. Technologies have a significant impact on how we live, work, and communicate every day. And from America, interestingly, the territory has been shot down.
According to the Ukrainian Foreign Intelligence Service, Russia is sinking ever deeper into economic dependence on China. Raw material projects in the Far East and Siberia are turning the region into a resource base for China, while local communities are left out of the promised benefits.